Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today, and it is Friday, January 11th, 2013. My website is ggnonline.com if you'd like to check it out. Also on YouTube, DDarko 2012 and 2013. So we were covering a lot of different issues: Syria, Russia, Pakistan, and India, and we'll start off with that. Finding a way, private Iranian firm may lay gas pipeline in Pakistan. This has been going on for a long time. But basically says Iran has designated a clean private company which has not been placed under U.S. sanctions to take direct contract for laying a pipeline in Pakistan under the Iran-Pakistan gas supply project, for which Tehran is extending a $500 million loan. So when things happen like instability, a lot of times it has to do with energy, it has to do with business. Create instability so you can have control through the guise of national security. Tel Aviv irked by Tehran and Cairo ties. So it says here, a prominent analyst tells Press TV that restoring bilateral relations between Iran and Egypt as the two powerful poles of the Islamic nations irritates the Zionist regime of Tel Aviv. Quote, restoring these relationships means that it is not going to be reliant anymore to this cycle of foreign relations with the U.S. and Israel, which would definitely irritate Israel very much. Then we have 0 U.S. troops in Afghanistan possible by 2015. This Ben Rhodes, White House Deputy National Security Advisor, suggested 0 troops in Afghanistan was possible by 2015. Then we have Pentagon prepares plan for up to 9,000 troops in Afghanistan after 2014. So this is from January 5th. This is from January 9th. So there you go. But it says the U.S. Defense Department has prepared plans for a smaller presence in Afghanistan after the White House insisted on examining the option of leaving fewer troops in the country after 2014. The newspaper said the plans now prepared by the Pentagon call for leaving roughly 3,000 to 6,000 or 9,000 or 100,000 U.S. troops in the country. Just throw out a number, right? So crazy stuff going on in this part of the world. Over 200 Afghan policemen poisoned in Balkh province just recently. Had more insider attacks dressed as, I think they were just Afghan policemen. Sometimes they say it's Taliban that have the uniforms of Afghan police, which they could, theoretically, you know. But who knows? Maybe they're just Afghan police that, like Iraqi police, they don't want the U.S. in there. So, yeah, it says here that nobody has yet claimed responsibility for the poisoning, whose cause is still unclear. 250 Afghan policemen have been poisoned in Afghan's northern province. It says on June 25th, 2012, some 76 Afghan policemen were poisoned in a police academy. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. They felt headaches and nauseous after eating breakfast. $450,000 stolen from the Afghan National Bank, similar to Iraq, with all that money was gone. I think it was millions in cash. About $500,000 was stolen from 3 branches of the Afghan National Bank in Kabul, Kunduz, and Badakhshan. So the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, is worried about Prince Harry serving in Afghanistan. You've probably seen this. It's an old article from the 27th. I've been holding on to it. He says he's worried about Britain's Prince Harry serving in Afghanistan as he pays tribute to British troops in the Christmas message. So he's the heir to the British throne, asked his son to write more letters home following revelations that Taliban would hugely increase the bounty for assassination of Harry after he killed one of their high-ranking commanders. Remember, I was just covering an article about his son, Harry, going over there and how he was actually possibly not illegitimate son, but kind of like a half son, and he's not full-blooded like his brother. So maybe they just sent him over there for like a little blood sacrifice. This picture is kind of eerie too, man. It almost looks like Vigo from Ghostbusters too. But you know, it's starting to impact him now, right? It's easy when you send him off, you know, send all these people you don't know, not your family out there, but when it's your own sons, you know. With 2 sons currently serving the armed forces, one of whom is with you all out there, I really do have at least some understanding of what your loved ones are going through, says Prince Charles. I dare say in some ways it might be slightly easier for those serving away from home with their mind on the job in hand than those left behind because of the constant worry. Here's that article I found at Bilderberg picked EU leader Van Rompuy calls for global governance with Russia. And then you have from January 9th, 2013, Moscow and Beijing reconnect as reset with U.S. fizzles. So it says here Russia and China, which share many of the same international concerns, are looking to fortify their strategic partnership, so they distance themselves from the EU supposedly and tighten it with China. Japan explores war scenarios with China from January 9th. It goes on here and it says, as Japan's party, the National Defense Task Force announced on the 8th that it would increase the nation's defense budget by more than 100 billion yen. They have 3 of 5 scenarios explored by the Defense Ministry recently involved the self-defense forces squaring off against the basically Chinese army. First scenario examined a war between China and Japan over the disputed islands in the East China Sea. It also said the second scenario, meanwhile, expands on the island issue and looks at a widening war involving China's attempts to seize these other islands west of northern Taiwan. The third is perhaps the most controversial, focused on how Japan would react to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan in 2021. Japan may allow jets to fire warning shots at Chinese aircraft during incursions, they said, authorizing the country's air self-defense force jets to fire warning shots when Chinese planes enter their airspace claimed by Japan. Chinese military is on high alert after it scrambles fighter jets to counter Japanese jets from today, 1/11. So it goes on here, it says, suddenly very real concerns over a flare-up in military escalations aside, it doesn't look like anyone is ready to back down in what is becoming an ever more heated and rancorous expression of nationalist pride, and certainly does not appear likely that China will lift its blockade on Japanese imports anytime soon. There was an op-ed from China Daily printed earlier today titled Unwise Foreign Policy Turns Japan into Their Own Enemy, and this time Zero Hedge says the Chinese propaganda is 100% correct. And he's referring to this paradox that this new leader in Japan says he may well crush the yen, but he will only aggravate Chinese tensions, thus hurting Japanese exports, GDP, and the current account even more. So it says here that, and with escalations coming faster and more frequent with each passing day, there's little room for optimism that despite all Japan is doing, that its economy stands any hope of recovery in 2013. In fact, the escalation and the never-ending saga over basically these islands says here that with this recent scrambling of jets, Japanese military aircraft disrupting the routine patrols of the Chinese administrative aircraft, that it only make it worse for their economy. China warns citizens to prepare for the worst as it sends fighter jets to the East China Sea. Just more news on it for you. Then you have they're getting ready, no obvious reason for why China is massively boosting stockpiles of rice, iron ore, precious metals, and dry milk. The UN experts are reporting confusion after figures show that China imported 2.6 million tons of rice in 2012, substantially more than a 4-fold increase over the 500,000 tons imported in 2011. The confusion stems from the fact that there is no obvious reason for the vastly increased imports since there has been no rice shortages in China. Said that they're actually possibly taking advantage of low international prices. But all that means is that China owns vast supplies of domestically grown rice are being stockpiled. So why would they do that? It says perhaps it's related to China's aggressive military buildup and war preparations in the Pacific and Central Asia. So they're also diversifying their cash assets into physical goods. You can go in there and check it out, talking about stockpiling on baby food and stuff like that, or formula. I still have a lot to get to. We'll probably have 4 videos today in today's report. Push for Mali war risk terror attacks in France. So they know this. These drone strikes and that always actually escalate opposition, i.e. Al-Qaeda, right? But like I said, that gives them the reason, the precedence to go in there. So they can't just go in there and start taking the resources from them. So it goes on here and it says that the international invasion of Mali aimed at occupying the northern 2/3 of the country and imposing on them a military junta which retains control over the southern portion has been backed by many nations, but none so loudly as France. So it goes on here and it says a top French judge is warning that it could have the opposite effect. He said that they're backing those who want to intervene militarily in Timbuktu, so we are the enemy and are identified as such. He revealed multiple probes have been launched to France's ethnic Malian community, anticipating the backlash. There are young dual nationals who will have links with sub-Saharan Africa, the judge said, At least 4 Malian terrorist cells have already been identified. The French do not keep specific track of their population by race, but it is estimated that over 1 million have direct ties to sub-Saharan Africa. French troops began military intervention in Mali, says Holland. They go on there, says, I've agreed to Mali's demand, which means French forces have provided support to Mali this afternoon. This operation will last as long as necessary. So he says French troops have started military intervention in Mali to help the Malian government repel the rebels that control the northern part of the West African country. Then you have Al-Qaeda carves out own country in Mali. This is December 31st, so they were building up the propaganda. But remember, Al-Qaeda does not exist, so you can go in there and check that video out. It goes through it. They're just basically the globalist little terrorist mercenaries for hire. U.S. they're used as pawns. I mean, they believe in what they're doing as far as jihad and all that. But most Muslims are moderate, and they'll say they're not Muslims. These people that blow people up, innocents. U.S. ready to send surveillance drones to cut the Congo. So they're going to start sending drones to help the United Nations peacekeeping mission in an African state despite opposition from Rwanda and other neighbors. So they don't even want it, but they're going to give them to them. The UN also wants drones too, remember that. Obama appoints first ever assassination czar. Many of you have probably seen that. John Brennan is the sole person in charge of the designating people to be assassinated on Tuesday. So he's the person who recently spoke about the drone program, calling it moral, ethical, and just, and has been known in the past to back the use of CIA to extract information from alleged terrorists, i.e. torturing, which actually companies are now getting sued for and paying for the prisoners in Iraq. And then you have Bradley Manning, whose sentence is already being reduced. U.S. demands judge dismiss lawsuits against assassination of citizens. So pretty interesting that basically you can't sue the government for these assassination drone strikes. Owner of the company that makes top-quality firearms posted a message on Facebook about mass shooters who have taken psychiatric drugs. Whoops, he's been killed in a car accident days later. He's the most celebrated battle rifle manufacturer in America. And it goes on here, he said he was killed in a mysterious car crash just a few days ago. I was talking about triggering programming, jumping off into the middle of a subway, oncoming train, veering your car onto the other side of the highway. According to Outdoor Wire, his car traveled across the oncoming lane onto the dirt highway shoulder until it struck two large boulders. The vehicle rolled, and he was ejected. Says before this, he listed all the school shootings tied to psychiatric drugs. At the end of the post, he asked what drugs was Adam Peter Lanza on. That was the last post he ever made. Eric Holder says gun owners should cower in shame like smokers. Well, I don't cower in shame. I give people space if I like to smoke or if I want to smoke, but I don't feel any shame for rolling my own organic tobacco made of rice papers or hemp papers and smoking it. I enjoy it. So, sorry, Mr. Eric Holder, you douchebag who funds and funnels weapons to drug cartels in which they can then say, well, America has too many guns. That's what's leading to all the violence, not the fact that we don't just decriminalize it and end the war on drugs like the war on terror. Hot new video is a 95 footage of Attorney General Holder when he was U.S. Attorney in D.C. Some marks of the Women's National Democratic Club. People should be ashamed to own guns just the way that cigarette smokers now cower outside buildings to smoke. What we need to do is change the way in which people think about guns, especially young people, make it something that's not cool, that it's not acceptable, it's not hip to carry a gun anymore, and the way in which we've changed our attitudes about cigarettes. When I was growing up, people smoked all the time. Both my parents did, but over time we changed the way people thought about smoking, so now we have people to cower outside of buildings and kind of smoke in private and don't want to admit it. So we're talking about it's a social, psychological thing, herd mentality and stuff like that. Fact is you can't smoke inside buildings, which I guess is okay, right? But people should, if people has a private bar or private business, then if they want to allow smoking there, they should be allowed to do that. And if people want to go in there, then they should, they're consenting to it. But most places it's illegal to smoke inside, all places, especially in the major mega cities. Then even smoking outside the building now, you have to be 50 feet away, and they don't provide any cover or shelter from the elements. So I guess they could tax gun owners, right? Smokers set to be taxed out of habit, so they're just going to tax you until you don't smoke anymore. Well, they know that's not going to happen because then they would lose their tax revenue. You have smoking kids. You've come a long way. So the artist made this work as a result of the Indonesian baby who smoked 40 cigarettes a day. She wanted to talk about the societal norms. So we'll see about gun control. Thank you.